Joining us from Los Angeles is Janet Yang. She's a prominent Hollywood producer. Janet, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's talk Oscars. The movie with the highest number of nominations this year at this year's Oscars is La La Land. Now, it's just been released in China. It was released on Valentine's Day, no less. How do you think it would do there? Are musicals an easy sell in China?
Oh, that's funny you should ask, because I was hired years ago to make a Chinese version of High School Musical for Disney, and our Chinese partners at the time said, we don't think Chinese audiences are necessarily ready. But a lot has happened in the last 5 years, and they do really like Oscar-nominated movies. So while it won't probably be a major blockbuster, I think it's going to get a fair amount of attention. And I think it's really important, in the meantime, to show films that aren't these huge tentpole movies, to give the audiences, a variety of product to choose from. I think there's this sense that all American movies are men in tights movies, and I think it's very important for them to see an array of things, and for them to get inspired by different kinds of movies as well for their own local product.
If we look at the industry in Hollywood, sometimes Hollywood's looked at as American soft power. If America was a corporation, Hollywood would be its marketing arm. And in that respect, I'm wondering, what kind of influence does Hollywood have in a country like China? China, of course, restricts the number of foreign movies shown in the country to 34. That's currently under negotiation with Hollywood. That number could increase. But has that restriction, for instance, given the domestic industry in China greater opportunities?
It's a mixed bag. I think when that number of films leapt from 12 to or 14 to 34 back in 2012, it was a much publicized decision when Xi Jinping, then Vice Premier, came to the United States. I know the Chinese filmmakers went into panic mode. I was at the Shanghai Film Festival that summer, and they were petrified that the American films were going to cannibalize the industry. And then, ironically, at the end of that year, 2012, there was a huge hit that came out. It was a local film called Lost in Thailand with two very popular actors, Xu Zheng and Huang Bo. And so they suddenly, the film made well over $100 million, that is, and cost well under that. So it gave people kind of a boost and encouragement. And since then, in the succeeding 3 or 4 years, there were quite a few very big local films. However, this past year has seen a flattening, and that's been unfortunate. And I think people are really now looking at what the problem was, and it seems to be lack of really good product. The audiences are getting pickier. They do have an array of choices, and so people are having to be a little bit more on their toes about the kinds of films that are being made.
Yeah, you're right about that. There has been a flattening. I was looking at some figures, and the figures for last year, 2016, show that these were figures provided by a Chinese research company. It shows that demand for movie tickets has been sluggish in China. In fact, foreign movies have done a lot better. Is that hurting the domestic industry?
It's interesting that when the local films weren't faring so well at the box office, they made a decision to loosen the quota, because you've got so many different forces at work in the industry. You've got the exhibitors who, of course, are thinking about their bottom line, as they do everywhere. And then you've got the local filmmakers. You've got the studios coming in and wanting to show more, and the audience is often demanding more. People just want to see a good film. So that sometimes clashes a little bit with the government regulations. And so you see that it's actually a very organic system there. There aren't hard and fast rules, and they do make adjustments when called for.
What about joint productions with U.S. producers? We have this movie, The Great Wall. It's just been released here in the United States. It's the most expensive co-production with China, costing $150 million. Let's take a look at a scene from the movie before I ask you a question about it.
1, 2, 3. Pull!
Matt Matt Damon starring in that movie there. Here's The Great Wall, which has made $170 million in China. Yet here in the United States, it's not been so successful. It's been a flop, in fact. How do you explain that?
Well, audiences decide what they want to see. And I think this was probably a difficult film to market in this country. This is a very difficult market in general. Audiences are used to, for 100 years now, Hollywood films have been making films more or less for the American market. So they've been bred on a certain kind of product that's very, very American in every aspect. This is now changing, so the studios see that the rise of other markets, especially China, is something that needs to be contended with. So, you know, there are films like The Great Wall which attempt to do that. But it is difficult to really appeal on such a large level to both audiences. It's, you know, it's a tentpole movie, as you know, in terms of the size of its budget, and to try to achieve that in both markets, I think, is very challenging.
Janet Yang, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome.